Yeah, man. We were just talking about, but the grass is greening up here and down there, over there.
You know, they say the grass is greener on the other side, and sometimes the grass is greener on the other side of the house. And that's the case with my house. It's like, you know, hey, what do you pick? Do you put all your eggs in the front yard basket because that's what people see and drive by and judge you on, or do you put it all in the, in the back where you get to, enjoy most of it? But I think everybody has that. Yeah, but it is yard cutting season. Everybody's doing their. Did you start the grass cutting cross train, put in Training Peaks movement?
I don't the lawnmower brick.
Yeah, I think you invented I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but have you worn ankle weights while doing the lawn?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think I remember back in the East Nashville days, the old lawnmower brick with some ankle weights.
Yeah, who knows what I was doing back then, man. Yeah. A lot of times I get on the bike and get home and then mow the lawn in the dead of the heat with ankle weights, no shirt, itch for a week. But
bacon, dude, while the rest of us just sat in your above ground pool and soaked in the cold water recovery.
Oh, man, I miss that. Nothing like it.
Those were some
days.
Yes, those were some days. But yeah, today, matter of fact, it's April 17th. The year, it's 2025. Welcome, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron Podcast. This is episode 847.
It is. And I was out doing a little overseeding this morning. Patches. I was digging up some.
You got to take care of the patches. Yeah, I mean I think that's just common sense. Yeah. Let me ask you this: do you judge him? Do you judge a man by his lawn?
That's maybe a little. I mean, I like somebody who takes, that I see out mowing and doing stuff. So yeah, I don't know. Like everybody up here, I'm trying to think about. Yeah, I think I do. A little bit.
Yeah, I think I do. Let me ask you this: Do you change your opinion if you find out that he's not the one that cuts it and takes care of it?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is like around here, everybody's got sprinklers, and everybody, I think, kind of almost contracts it out. So it's kind of like, but a lot of people don't live here either. So I kind of got to give them a break.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, it's to me, it's like getting a lawn. I mean, I cut my own grass because I like it. I mean, my front yard is sus, but my backyard is freaking fantastic. But and I will say that my trimming and edge work is spot on. I do judge people based on how well they can edge. That's something that I won't change. I definitely judge people on how they can edge, or if they just don't weed eat, period. That to me is like the sin of all sins. Why even cut the grass if you're not going to weed eat and trim?
Yeah.
It's like getting a haircut and only cutting the top of your hair and leaving the sides grow out. It's the exact same thing. But on the other end, if you really love your lawn, getting a lawn care service is kind of like getting a coach. You don't want to think about it, right? You don't want to stress about it. You just want to be taken care of. You want somebody to make the plan for you. You want somebody to execute. You want somebody to, ask questions for you. And they come and winterize your sprinkler system. They know when to turn it off. They know when to cut your grass. They know what level to cut it. The irrigation guy knows, how many zones you need, how long for each zone, what time of day it is. It can be pretty stressful. But if you hired somebody out, it can be, I think, the ultimate show of love. If you just don't have the time to take care of it, it's better to contract that stuff out, to love your lawn through someone else than to just neglect your lawn, just like some people neglect their training because they don't want to get a coach.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think, I can see, couples sitting down at the table. Where are we going to cut costs here? We're cutting out all this because we need lawn care. And yeah, it's because, but they can come in and what takes me about 4 hours, they can do in about 30 minutes. And it looks better, usually.
It does.
So, yeah, that's a really good point. It's like my haircut. Right. Did I tell you I got a new haircut girl? And she.
Oh, what?
Well, I mean, I moved, so I had to get a new one. And this one's even faster than the old one. I literally get out of there in like
5 minutes.
It's 5 minutes max, dude. It's kind of unsettling because I feel like
you wonder if you don't do the math. I mean, we'll get to triathlon and endurance sports here in a minute, but are you doing the math on what you're paying per minute here? Because it might be pretty expensive.
Oh, it's high end salon stuff, but it's like it's $20 with the tip. So I'm like, I kind of actually think then the time saving is sort of worth it in a sense.
That, I mean, to me,
it
that's
all
that's the
adds.
changer. I totally agree with you.
It's like I'm in, I'm out. I don't even. There's like no conversation whatsoever. How's your day going? It's going fine. All right,
And
there you
then
go.
they don't talk to you at all.
Well, yeah, there's some talk, but it doesn't
Oh.
really, you can't really get in any kind of meat on the conversation. It's just sort of like top end, and then the cape's off, and I'm out of there.
Yeah, but you're usually a talker.
So
Do you like that?
I find myself paying going and trying to still kind of hang around, but
yeah, I was gonna say you generally like a little bit of extra. I mean, it's like to me, like I don't want my barber to talk to me at all. I want you to cut my hair, and like you said, get me out of there as quickly as possible. Same way if I'm getting a massage. Don't talk to me. Don't try to make small talk.
Yeah,
Just do your job, increase the pain, release the recovery, and that's it. I don't need any extra chit chat. I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, this is probably a sort of a dickish move, but yesterday I was getting out of the car, long day at work. I'm just gonna talking to you. Got out of the car, pulled in, and I see the neighborhood. I swear we'll get the triathlon, but I see the neighborhood soliciting roamer. Right, you walk out and I'm sure you have some in yours, but they're walking around with like an iPad or a Kindle, and with like a stylus, and they have like up their shirt tucked in. You're like, nobody walks around like that unless they're trying to sell you something. They still go door to door. I mean, and I have a lot of respect for people that go door to door. I think it takes a lot of cojones and to have that kind of, because you're going to get rejected 95% of the time.
Yeah,
and I see him. I see him kind of moseying around the sidewalk as he sees me pulling in, and he diverts. I'm not even out of the car 3 steps. And this is on him. A little too early trying to engage. I hadn't even got my bag out of the back. He goes, "Hey, excuse me, sir." And I just looked at him and I said, "I don't want whatever you're selling is, not today." And he goes, "Oh, well, you can check the HOA board." I said, "No, I'm good, buddy. I don't have time for those kind of, like, I know some people like to drag them on, but at some point I feel like he has to appreciate the fact that I was like, you know what? Thanks for not wasting my time and give me like the 10-minute. Oh, okay, yeah. I'll be in touch. And then you have no desire and you have no intention of ever discussing this ever again. But you just wait the 10 minutes. He at least I freed him up to go knock on at least 18 other doors and bug 18 more people, because I was like, dude, I don't want any part of what you're selling. I don't care if you're handing out $100 bills. I don't want none of it at 5:15 on a Wednesday afternoon. Go find somebody else to bother.
Exactly. Yeah.
And don't tell me to check the HOA board. Like, oh, well, you can get a free roof for insurance. I'm like, well, HOA also says no soliciting, so go away right now.
Yeah.
Sorry. If you're a door-to-door salesman, love you.
Yeah. No, I don't get much of that up there. I did have a lady a couple of weeks ago walk up, and I opened the door. I said, yes. And she didn't say a word. She just kind of gave me a pamphlet about going to church. And I go,
I was going to say, as soon as you said pamphlet, I figured I knew exactly where you were going with that.
Yeah. I just said thank you, and she just kind of nodded her head and walked away. I was like, damn. That's pretty strong. But anyway.
I was going to say, a very strong move, because you probably almost were like, whoa. That's it?
I know. Yeah. Wait.
Wait. Tell me more. Right?
Yeah.
And that's
what I've always called the takeaway.
That's right. Man, nicely done. But anyway, yeah. So I'm sure, you know what? It's springtime. You got people doing more door to door. You got more lawns being cut. This is all stuff that you people need to know, and I'm sure that's on very much your top of the mind. Along with the racing season, we got Ironman Texas next weekend, Boston Marathon on Monday. Always fun to watch. I think the Marathon Indiana this weekend. It is. I think next weekend is always like on our calendar, the first weekend where the race roster we have for our team is like 4 pages long, because there's just a ton of like Olympics and sprints and half marathons, full marathons, Ironman Texas, and then it just starts and it doesn't stop. And, this time of year, there's always, as we get outside, there's always questions about, training and getting outside. I was reading a comment earlier today about, an athlete went outside. He was like, yeah, I like to get on these midweek rides because it's super windy and there's all these things I like to do with it. And it kind of really benefits, my training. I wasn't able to put out as much power today because it was super windy and I had to put most of my energy towards, just trying to keep my, my bike upright. And I just commented, I was like, dude, these are like, power aside, who cares? Like the ability to hold your bike upright in an insane wind is a win in itself, but it'll come in super handy on race day. And, that's one of the things I think we talk about a lot here recently is just about getting out in the elements, doing these things that, allow us to be in overly adverse situations that then make, the terrain itself, the condition itself look a lot easier. You could do, just like we talked about this before a ton is, sometimes the harder you work, you want race day to somewhat not feel easy, but be a little bit easier in some aspects versus like this huge daunting thing you have to, explore each and every time you may or may not want to do. But and then when the other athletes I was looking through this morning, and I can't, maybe even the topic for today, and we talked about, taking care of the inside versus the outside. And I remember one of the first races I ever did. And I think this is generally, as I was kind of reading through, Ironman did release some of their data yesterday on like the growth of the sport. Yesterday, I think actually after you and I talked yesterday, I was going through and I was checking in and they're talking about the growth of the sport. It's getting younger, which I also find kind of surprising. And that it's growing, especially at the 70.3 level. And I remember as I was kind of reading through in the growth of the sport, this race is 2 decades ago, but one of the things they mentioned in there was, they talked about obstacles and barriers to entry of the sport. And a lot of it was about how people look. And you get very intimidated, right? By, and I remember, I think I mentioned this before, as I was doing the Kiowa Island Triathlon on my way back from moving home from Hilton. And this is 2002, 2003. So long time ago. And I remember lining up at the start of the race and I looked left, I looked right, and I felt like the most out of shape person there. I mean, the people I was lining up with, for whatever reason, it was like Ripped City. Like it was like a Baywatch commercial. I didn't get the memo. I wasn't invited. I just kind of showed up as like an extra, and that's how everyone looked on the start line. And I got out of the water, and thought I was like the last one out. And I came over the sand dunes, and I think I was like second out of the water. Everybody else was still in there. But it was my first, kind of like revelation that you can't judge everyone on how fit they are or how well they take care of themselves by how they look. And I just thought because they had, 6 packs and broad shoulders and looked really in shape, I just assumed they were going to be faster than me and better than me and maybe even healthier than me. Same thing goes for when you see people, walking on the street and you might see, a male or a female that looks, maybe really, really lean and quote unquote the body style or body type that you like or that you want, but then that might not be healthy. Right? They might eat like 500 calories and they might be starving themselves. They might have a bad relationship with food, and so in this day and age, I think where we spend so much time focusing on what people look like or the appearance of how fast we are, how fit we are, the appearance of our bikes, right? I mean, I think that's like maybe the best what matters on the inside. I mean, every single person, I think at some point, unless you're at the points end, has been passed by someone or an older person on a bike that's like 40 years old and they just freaking smoke you. And then you got these $10,000 bikes, $15,000 bikes people are spending money on, and it's the engine. And again, like going back to, what's on the inside versus the outside, to me, like so much of the sport, again, it's about longevity, right? How are we treating our body? What are we putting in our body when we fuel, when we train? What are the things we're willing to give up potentially, right? Or sacrifice in the name of maybe, not dosing ourselves with insanely high, amounts of processed foods and things like that. Are we willing to give those things up for what our insides may or may not be going through? Is the way that we train healthy, right? It might make us feel fitter or maybe even feel like we look fitter. But are we running ourselves into the ground by training so hard all the time and going long, 3 times a year and just beating our body to a pulp? And I just think it's a conversation that has to be had, periodically to remind ourselves, right, that, you can look a certain way. And I think we've all been here, right? We've all known someone that looked fit, that we thought was super fit, that ate super healthy, right? And then, they came down with some disease or had a heart attack or, something else happened, or you talk to somebody and they look like they're just ripped out of their mind. You go to the gym with them or hop on a run and they got to like run walk. It's just, I think the human body is so crazy and how you can see so many different shapes and different sizes and different heights and different weights, and you look at the pro field and see that. But, I think for us at the age group level, And I think it's just been interesting and really fun as a coach over the last couple of months as you and I have kind of explored the, how are we treating ourselves in our body, and what are we, what kind of choices are we making to, how much do we need of X, Y, and Z. It's been fun to watch some map. It's been really fun and honestly like valuable for me as a coach to have like healthy back and forth with athletes that are just experimenting with what they feel like, and to see these success stories of both ends of the spectrum, right? Of just how they feel, again, not just in training, but how they're feeling in their day-to-day life, and just figuring out like what they really need. Because I honestly do think that we are all very, very different in the what we need and when we need it. But I think finding out that puzzle is the difference in, again, not just maybe feeling good during your threshold intervals, but being a, functional, high level mental, great mental acuity, great energy level, happy, right? Parent, spouse, friend, and just human being, right? I think we just forget, we're so worried about what we feel like during training that a lot of times people are just suffering through the other 22, 23 hours of the day because of what they put themselves through that hour, and maybe even what they put in their body, that they can't even function at a high level. And that just, it just doesn't feel good. And I just think it's something that we just have to remind ourselves of as we kind of get closer to these races, and we're so obsessed with performance that, longevity and health and mental, mental health, right? And how those all are woven together is ultimately what we should be shooting for.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I just think it all starts from within, like you're talking about criticism or, over thinking about what bike you have or how you're looking or whatever. It made me think about bodybuilders and how, a lot of times when they're quote unquote looking their most fit or, competition ready is when they're really not drinking any water and they're cutting back and they're getting really super ripped, and that doesn't necessarily mean a healthy state. And I mean, like for me, it's interesting how, some days I can wake up and feel like, all right, I feel damn good. And then I walk by a mirror or something. I'm like, damn, dude, need to cut some weight off of this shit, And then the next day or whatever, I might not. And I go in there and, I don't know if it's just like a little dehydrated or what the deal is, or you slept better or something. It's just weird, like how you look at yourself in the mirror. I've often thought about, just getting rid of mirrors because it's such a weird thing. They're all different, and sometimes you can look at different angles and different lighting, and all this weird shit goes on. You start having these impressions of yourself based on a reflection, and it's just really I don't know. It's interesting, man. It's almost like the ability to let go of criticism, and then when that becomes from yourself, that gets even more tricky. I think it's sort of like being out there, putting yourself out there. The more you put yourself out there, the more apt you are to get criticized for things. It's like sometimes I think about that with this podcast. We've done 840 or 50 of them, and I know people are gonna have opinions, right? So it's like, we're just trying to do the best we can and put content out every week, and not charging for it, just throwing it out there and doing it for ourselves, doing it for everybody else. And it's sort of, this criticism can come from different places, and you just have to kind of like, I think criticism hits harder when you're in a self-critical place too, and I think that translates into racing or whatever. I was trying to, I had a good, decent run outside yesterday, and one of the things I was trying to do the whole time was just be in the moment, be in my body, instead of starting to think about, well, if I do this for 2 months, I can get my pace, this and that, and thinking about fit. You know what I mean? It's sort of like
It's so tempting.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's when we get out of our heads is when, it's sort of that, it's the whole topic really, is just the more out you get, the more you start thinking about other external variables versus what you're controlling, which is this particular run and this particular stride. And just sort of being in that pocket is really all you can do. And I think if you learn to appreciate that and know that that is it, then you're less apt to be affected by negative thought and critical outside discussion.
I mean, I think you can also, I mean, we were talking, mostly from, the chin down, but you could also, what matters more is what is more on the inside than, on what you see is definitely in the mind, right? I mean, we talking like, how you're treating your body from a health standpoint, but how you're treating yourself from like a mental and emotional health standpoint, and how you're becoming mentally prepared for race day, the demands and being resilient. I mean, we see it every year, with some of the athletes that we coach, with some, people that you watch when you go to races. Like, you just see people, fail and falter and give up, or that just don't have it, and a lot of that is mental, right? And you see a lot of people that, go in these, I mean, hell, I was the poster child back when I was drinking for going into some of these races, drunk from the night before, but I was in such an awful place that when I got to race day, like I would push it. And then when it came time to make like more decisions, I would just like bail. I was like, I'm done. I got nothing. I quit and dropped out of one race up in Knoxville when I was winning. And I was an overall leader, and I got about, I think, 10 miles from transition. I was like, I can't do this anymore. Just turned around and went back. I had nothing. I had no mental, I had mental pain, but no like mental resolve and energy, right? Because we have to have bandwidth, I think, to be able to, withstand some of these, moments, in racing that are all uncomfortable. I'm sure if you ask most professionals and most age groupers, like, and they go out there, and start swimming, or run the marathon, a lot of them want to quit, a lot of them want to walk, a lot of them want to pull over and stop, but they keep going. And so you can look a certain way and train a certain way. You can be, I think it's what like Brett and Sutton called it, a paper tiger. Like on paper, you look like you got it. Training's been perfect, hitting all your zones, get all your sleep. But when it comes to, race day, it's a matchup problem. And you see it all the time in sports, right? You see a team like, it seems like a little bit of a matchup problem, or a team that hasn't ever been tested finally gets tested, and then you just like they falter and fail because they haven't been through it. And it's the ones that have been through like the tough moments and had to find their way to claw back and find ways to win. Like that's how you create, a winning mentality. And going into racing with a winning mentality is crucial. And the more and more like the sport evolves with science and with research and with marketing, right? I think it's honestly like the biggest change that I've seen in the sport outside of the super shoes, and the amount of like free speed people are getting from that, is how much marketing has changed the sport. And I don't even know that it's for the good. I mean, I think most people say most marketing tends to be bad. I mean, you would know better than anybody. But it's the effect of marketing on the sport and the obstacles for the sport, and just like it makes people have to think way, 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 way too much outside of just waking up and doing a 40-minute run, or getting on the bike for an hour and 10, or getting a swim in that, amounts to 2,000. Like that's how it always used to be. And now there just seems to be so many more things that we've added to the puzzle that make it challenging to be successful and to then feel successful. Then we're done. You got every end of the spectrum when it comes to, swimming. You got goggle choices, you got wetsuit choices, you got, do I wear a wetsuit in the temperature? How do I train? Do I swim the master group? Do I swim alone? What kind of intervals do I do? Cycling, you got more equipment than you'd ever imagine, and everything changes, right? And now it's high stack is the way to go. And, arms out in front so you can keep your shoulders and your elbows narrow. And then you got helmets that are changing. They used to be the tiniest one possible. Now you got, helmets that they look like, Darth Vader, bikes that cost $12,000. Now we're going for low PSI and tubeless wheels. I mean, it's just insane. And it's just the amount of energy we put, running, it's mostly shoes. And it does, feel a lot more, not archaic isn't the word, but raw, like swimming is. You just hop in the pool, you don't have a watch, you use the clock and you're done. It's that feeling, right? But it's just so many things add to the appearance factor of being, quote unquote race ready. I'm sure there are people who are afraid to show up to races, or that are nervous to show up to races with with a bike off Craigslist and maybe, tennis shoes in their pedals and, on their, flat pedals. But the sport is in general is just so much more than that, and what it provides for people on both ends, right? Whether you're pointing an age group or whether you're a beginner, the health benefits, the mental, emotional benefits can be, I mean, they can be life changing if you don't get so, swept up in how things are, how paranoid you are about being ready for race day, how hard you feel like you have to go, how you can't take rest. I mean, let's think about this for a minute. Like, most people in every outside of sports, if they don't feel well or they're super sick or they're super stressed, like they don't consider adding more additional stress to their life. Like I had an athlete that I coach. It's very, very, very high level, age group winner in multiple races, has a lot of life stress and is already a high stress person. And I just said, it's amazing how much more that underlying stress that we have, when you have 3 or 4 different things that seem to be stressful in life, like the impact that has on us. And so the triathlete, the type A or even the type B, like the need and the desire and almost like the obsession with still having to get it done, while yes, there's always a benefit, I think, to doing some kind of movement, but going out and hammering yourself for 45 minutes straight probably isn't the best choice. Same way as, probably eating 2 pizzas the night before a long ride and then shoving, and then snorting raw sugar up your sleeve for the entire ride probably also isn't the best thing for your body and for your health. And so I think just that we have so many things coming from us from so many directions that just like, to me, it's just very similar from, but before phones came along, when you're standing in line in the grocery store, you just stand there. Maybe even talk to the person behind you. Maybe, pick up a shitty magazine like the Inquirer, or People Magazine. Like you just stand there and you just stand there with your thoughts. Same thing. Go for a walk with your thoughts. You got downtime, you're driving with your thoughts. And now we just have so much time to just not feel and not think and not be. And then during those periods of time that we're not thinking of our own self and what we really want and what we really want to do, we are using that void, right? We're filling that gap of time that should be free thinking, right? To like have our conscious and subconscious work through feelings and thoughts and anxieties or goals, whatever it is. Instead of like having that free time, we instead insert chaos. Right? It's like the difference in, you got 2 doors, and the door is, on the left is like a room where it's just you and you can yoga and meditate and relax and get your mind right and think through all the things you want to do. And then the door on the 2 is like a rave. You got lights, you got techno, you got glow sticks, you got, people shooting ecstasy. Like, it's just wild. And then you can't think, all you're thinking about is like, holy shit, what is going on around me? And you can't think at all. It's just crazy, crazy, crazy. And I think that's basically the world that we live in. Is we don't have we take away this downtime that we're supposed to have to work through things and decide things again on our own, right? Again, just we talked about from like a fueling and a health standpoint and a training standpoint, right? Like there's always things that we need, to do and to fill and to to be better. And I think we all have this intrinsic gut feeling about what we feel is best for ourselves, whether it's food or training or friendships or, where we want to live or what we want to do. But a lot of times we just don't even have a connection with that because we are basically like our mindset is running interference on the amount of information and data and marketing that we purposefully and submissively, impose on ourselves on a minute by minute, second by second basis. Whether it's reading, whether it's listening to, 19 different podcasts over a week that all cover 19 different types of, training and triathlon. Then you're reading different articles and, one end you're reading, you should never eat meat ever and you're the devil. And the other one, it's like, hey, you should eat only meat. And then the other one's just like 17 different diets you want to go. You don't even know what to do. So you're paralyzed in inaction because you're surrounded by the most complex changes mentally, physically, emotionally about how you should approach races, how you should approach training, what you should wear, what should you do, how much should you take in, where should you get it from, how often should you take it in, what time of day is it perfect, what intensity control is different. You're paralyzed again, like in having this inability to make decisions for yourself, that you really are just reactionary, and you're probably just grabbing like the lowest hanging fruit that isn't even the right lowest hanging fruit. It's just the one that you feel that maybe seems exciting for that second. And then the next day you turn on another podcast and do another thing, and all of a sudden you're questioning the fruit you had the day before. And again, like when we talk about, what goes on the inside and the outside, yes, the way that you treat your body generally presents itself, right, on how, on yourself physically, right, from an outwardly appearance. But and I think it's hard for everybody. I was talking to a couple coaches last week, just how hard it is to still want to consume information to be a better coach, but to also put on a lens in which you can filter through, just because you listen to a podcast, just because you read a book, or just because you consume a specific amount of or type of information with a certain subject, doesn't mean that you are then obligated to immediately make that change. Or that what you read, because you spent the time reading it, or because it came from a person smarter than you, or that you think is smarter than you, that you must change. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. I know a lot of coaches struggle with that. You hear these professional coaches talking about the way they train, the way they coach, and you might take notes, and you may have like I know a lot of coaches have imposter syndrome, like they just don't feel like they should be doing what they're doing, but they're great at it. And then they're like, God, maybe I'm just wrong. But I mean, I think that we're all right on a case by case basis, just like professional coaches and professional and high level executives are, the best at what they do on a person by person, on a case by case basis. I'm sure we can look at every executive on the planet, or marketing department, or CEO, and they've made just, asinine decisions before that are probably like backfired immensely. But then they, refocus and do it again. But the point is to stick with, what you think in your gut. But I just think it's so hard. While information is great, and the access to phones and what we have on them, on a daily basis, it's it's great. Like it's just we're spoiled, but also I think we're just creating this distracted animal of so many options that it's just becoming very, very challenging, I think, to draw those boundaries, and it's almost like stop listening to everyone, for a change, and just listen to yourself. And because there's too much to sift through for any one person.
Yeah, I guess my sort of general philosophy on coaching and life and everything is based around this goal of simplicity. It's pretty simple in a way. It's kind of like what's going in and what's going out, and going in mentally, spiritually, nutritionally, companionship wise, whatever. And is it going well? I mean, we talk about everybody wants to quote unquote be in shape, and I think a lot of times that translates into they want their body to look awesome based on sort of societal perspective of that, but I've seen a lot of people, who are absolutely shredded and look awesome, that are, not very happy. I think there's because it becomes sort of I guess an obsession, and the same kind of goes for like money, people that chase a lot of money. And I think it's pretty well documented that quote unquote money doesn't make you happy. And always chasing something. And to me, it's like, I've seen a lot of, very quote unquote successful financial people, powerful people that can, make things happen, who have all the money they need. And then it's about, running a company or like a big corporation or something. And there, you just kind of step back and ask, is it a net good, or, for the people around you or the people involved? And I think a lot of people deal with that kind of like dilemma or that question, so when we think about our own self and our own bodies, it's kind of like, what are we going to do to be, satisfied and feel good and have net positives for us and everybody around us and things like that. And I think obsession one way or the other can be, kind of tricky to navigate, I think you brought up drinking in that segment there. And yeah, I mean, like drinking's a great example. I think it's sort of like, in sort of along the lines of your rave comparison, it's really, it's an effort to get out of yourself. It's like, it's otherworldly, the feeling that you would get from that. And, that's why they probably call it spirits, because it's like a different, place that you're taking your mind to, and you're really trying to escape your body. So I think it's really interesting, because I think a lot of times I sort of gauge my overall health and mental and physical health by how long I can sit in meditation without going crazy, or without, being distracted. Or how long can you sit without your phone and just actually be there and not need to go outside? And I think it's almost like, in some ways, a direct reflection on how healthy you are as a human. And those are just things that's really interesting to me, because I think we can translate that into our training, and just the ability to not have to get notifications on our phone, or to always be checking the numbers or all these kind of things. How do you feel? Simplicity. What are you putting in, and how you feel, and how are you getting it out, and what's coming out of you? And I think all you can do is all you can do. One of my big things too is sort of like own where you're at. I think a lot of us can have, goals and dreams and stuff like that, and we'll try to get to them too quickly without, sort of passing through the phase that we're in, and doing that well and owning it well. It's like practicing anything. You have to kind of learn the fundamentals and the basics, and then you go up a notch, and then you keep doing it. And that's kind of the goal, is to keep mastering where you're at, and then, making that a habit that comes naturally, and then getting better, on top of that, sort of transcend and include. And the last thing I wrote a note about, you mentioned marketing, and is it bad? And I've always thought that, the answer to that is tricky, because I used to do it, but it's usually at the core, it's like, how do we manipulate somebody,
Right.
So I've always felt like content marketing is the only marketing I trust. It's when I see people talking about it in an honest way, somebody who's used it or done, I guess it's sort of the testimonial thing, but even those sometimes are, because I've done a lot of videos of testimonial type things, and we'll just interview somebody for like 15, 20 minutes and take like 30 seconds of it, the best shit they say about it. So it's all tricky. I just think it needs to kind of, I just believe in organic sort of word of mouth kind of stuff like that. And I don't know, I guess that was kind of an offshoot, but that's what we do.
I mean, I like offshoots. But no, I mean, it's the majority of it. I mean, and what you said there about marketing, right? Is marketing bad? No, I think it's all based on like our ability or inability to have boundaries and thoughtfulness when we consume marketing. And to me, it's also like where we are with our mentality that when we see it. Right. I mean, it's like I'll give you an example. Like, I think, to me, it's very similar to like, so yesterday they announced a new 70.3 in New Mexico. And every single time they announce one of those, I'm like, man, these guys are brilliant, because it's new. And we called this a couple years ago, that when 70.3 is easily the most popular distance. That's not even close right now. And there's more popping up. They're selling out. There's more people doing the same pace than there ever been. And we called it, like, they're going to just pop out. They're going to do these. They're going to pick these two, these locations where there's only going to be there for like 2 years. Because the longer something stays, the more normalized and the more general and the more, less exciting it becomes. For most places. Been there, done that. Been there, done that. Been there, done that. And I guarantee you, because, when they put that out on Facebook and they email you about it, it's marketing. It's not information, it's marketing. But I guarantee you that yesterday when people, because I got, 6 text messages about it. That's my race for next year, baby. I'm in. And I'm like, dude, you haven't worked out in like 4 months. But good to hear from you again. But that's the thing, right? Is like if you're in a space where you need something, you need a jolt, you need an infusion, you need like something, a why, you need something to, or at least, and here's like the usual problem is like you probably don't even in the back of your mind don't have any intention of doing the race because you struggle with consistency or whatever it is, but you just want to feel excited for a little bit. And so it grabs you at like the most vulnerable time. And that's what happens with marketing. And so I think, like when we look at it, is it good, is it bad? Again, like I think it's like not just the eye of the beholder, but like also like where they are in that day. Are you in a great mood, in a vulnerable mood, a weak one? Or are you in a really strong, resilient one and steady in your place? And I think we all absorb things differently, and that goes just with everything, like mental and emotional things, and how we communicate and how we treat ourselves, and even like positive, negative self-talk. And again, like going back to the the consumption piece of it, to me, it's also so difficult because there's so many different agendas out there in every realm. You have the overly holistic, which is like, always be kind to yourself, always love, treat your body with kindness. And then you got the David Goggins, which is like, I don't give a fuck if you don't have legs today. You get out there and you run 200 miles because that's what we do, grind all day. And you got very few people in between. It's just like pendulum swing after pendulum swing. And you're like, wait, it's like watching a tennis match, right? With your head, you're looking left, you're looking right, you're looking left, you're looking right, and that goes with training, it goes with nutrition, it goes with how we eat, it goes with politics, and you're like, holy shit, like why can't I just look forward for a change and just do whatever it is I want to do? But it's not that you can't, it's just that it's hard because there's always something going on. And I think that just kind of lends itself to a piece that we talk about a lot that I don't think is talked about enough. And you mentioned it about, how long can I go without my phone? How long can I get? And I do think that is a problem with people on race day.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people aren't used to not having that extra jolt from a Facebook like, or their favorite song, or a motivational text from a friend, or a YouTube video. It's science. It's been proven. Like we get this dump of adrenaline and dopamine from likes on Facebook, or positive text messages, or things we watch, or music that we listen to. That's my pump up jam, man. That gets me rolling. And you got nothing on race day, but whatever you got in between both ears. And so I 100% think that it's a performance limiter for most people because of how much they rely mentally and emotionally on the extras that we now have. Like the days are pretty much gone. They're not gone, they're by choice, right? But they're just gone where most of us, hop on our dumb trainer like I did back in the day and used a note card for a workout, and you got to just pedal and go nowhere for forever. No miles, you got heart rate, you got no power. That was it. But guess what? That's what you're going to race. It's like race day was a bonus because I got miles per hour. That legit. I'm not having to guess like the circumference of my wheel and my cat-eye cadence sensor, and you got people. And you're like, thank God, because I don't have anybody going on right now, and like this is great. You're getting that a emotional, mental boost that comes out in the physical performance way, like you talk about when you go to races. But I think for a lot of people, it's the opposite because they do so much training, right, either with a group or on Zwift or these virtual things and listening to music the whole time, or they're cruising through 8 episodes on Netflix, or they got their that they get to race day, and it's almost like a numb scenario with more quiet. But then they're also not used to training with people. They don't train with a group. They just see them virtually on whatever platform they use. And then you got to deal with real people. And so it's like you got anxiety from all these people that you got to swim with now that you usually try to avoid. And then you got no outside, like Ironman rule, no outside assistance, right? Can't listen to music, can't get help from a fan. It's like it's just on you. It's like now we've become so reliant on maps. You're like going like 2 miles of grocery. You're like, let me go ahead and plug that in the GPS. And you don't even need it, whereas like, back in the day, you didn't have any of that, before you were printing off MapQuest, directions off your printer that took 6 weeks, and you have an account, the mileage, you go by in your car, like, all right, we're at 2,438 miles. So when we get to 2,628, keep on the lookout for Highway 73, and we got to take a right there. I mean, like we don't do that anymore. It's all catered, and you take one like left turn and you're like rerouted. It happens just to be 2 minutes faster. Versus like back in the day, you take a wrong turn, you don't even know you took a wrong turn for like 45 minutes, and then you got to backtrack and you got to find your way. And so we get to like the races now, and it's almost like, again, like our training has become overkill in how much we need from a sensory standpoint. Then on race day, we're required. It's like, we've taken all of our performance enhancing drugs are gone. And then we remove those, then we increase the ones that cause anxiety, right? I got to go outside and ride my bike for the first time in, 6 months. Holy shit. I've got to go swim with 3,000 people. I haven't even seen 3,000 people outside of my house in the last 8 months. And then I got to go run, and then I got to make sure, like I don't have any music. So how am I going to like get pumped up? It's like these are all performance enhancers in my opinion, because they keep you focused, they keep you tight, and you become so accustomed to having them that it becomes part of your routine. Just like having your phone in your pocket. We've all done this. You've reached for your pocket to see if your phone is there, even though you knew it wasn't in your pocket. You do the old phone pat down. And you're like, I know I don't have it on me, but here I am, check my pocket, because that's what we do. And so I think, like, again, let me think about like how we're mentally and emotionally preparing the most out of ourselves, on race day to do things physically. I go back to like, and you've told a story a few times, I think it was like July 4th, everybody was out partying and like raving, and myself included probably. And you hopped on your train in the garage and opened it up and rode for like, what, 3 hours? And like hammered it out. Is that the correct story? Or am I making that up?
No. At least 3. I think.
And then so when you do get to race day, it is like a performance enhancer, because you're getting all this extra because you train at a minimum, or you go out and you race, like, an athlete did a 40K TT last week, and the goal was to, just kind of check, overall power, and power meter couldn't connect. So you just did a 40K TT based on effort and heart rate, which a lot of people, I think, honestly, probably wouldn't have done it. Well, I can't see the value in the doing it, because I can't see the power in what I did. And I can't get that dopamine hit. I can't get that endorphin rush by seeing how great I did from a bike computer. Not because you finished exhausted, knowing you paced it well, legs throbbing, out of breath, pedal to the metal. Like, that should be the reward. But everything we have and everything that we attach ourselves to comes with, again, it just comes with an attachment. It comes with links. It comes with uploads. It comes with additional, steps. And I'm telling you, it's robbing us from what we're supposed to be doing and how well we're supposed to be doing it. And then when you get to race day, I'm telling you, and I'm sure I'll see it next week at Ironman Texas. It's why so many people crumble, because they wake up and they're immediately out of there. Now, to be fair, if I woke up and didn't have any coffee, I'd be a disaster. I mean, I got to have a cup of coffee, and I got to have my initial poop, and then I'm out the door, and then my day's pretty much set. But outside of that, I think it is you got the music right there before the the start of the swim, and that gets you going. Then you're all in your head. I mean, how to people swim with earphones now in the pool. And it's just, I'm telling you, I know we harp on this a lot. I'm sure people hate it and they don't listen to us anymore because everything else is like so science and lactate and all this kind of over the top stuff. But I'm telling you, I think the to me, it's just like over specialization in sports. It's like telling your kid to only play one sport for a while. You have no idea that's even their sport. You just chose to go in on it. They could have been a natural. You could go all in on soccer and work them to death, and then they get burnt out by 16. And really, if you just put them in a bunch of different sports growing up, they would have found one they were naturally good and that they loved it and they wanted to do for the rest of their life. And they'd been better at because they did it for longer. And so you're over specializing in science, and that's where a lot of these coaching companies are going towards us we're more specialized. We pay more attention to detail. We pay more. It's like that's again, it's all marketing, but it's what people want to hear right now. I'm sure it's bad marketing for us that we take a holistic athlete driven approach towards the athletes that we train. And yes, you use science, but on the other end of the spectrum, like you have to encourage again from what matters on the inside and out, like to them to be less dependent. Like that's the point. That's the purpose of coaching, is to make an athlete less dependent on you, to inform them, to educate them, to guide them, to help them, encourage them to make these decisions on their own. Because guess what? If you're not, then on race day, you're all you are is a helicopter coach. If you're not informing your athletes, help them make decisions and make failures, you're just like a helicopter parent is always overbearing, over the top of their kid, never lets them make a mistake, never lets them, fail, is overbearing and micromanaging. Like if you're that kind of coach, then you're a helicopter coach. You gotta let your athletes fail. You gotta let them learn. You gotta let them grow. You gotta encourage them to do things that are uncomfortable. You gotta encourage them to go ride and race and run by feel. You gotta go watch us in a half marathon. You gotta treat a race that you thought was gonna be your biggest race of the year and just say, you know what, fuck it, just roll with it and have at it. No guidance except for do it, give it your best. You make the call. That's what you're supposed to. That's how. I mean, you can always tell us, right? By kids who have been spoon-fed their entire life, like they can't make decisions on their own. Like they have no idea what's going on. They can't troubleshoot. They have no common sense. They don't know how to adjust. And you see athletes all the time. Every workout is pre-built. Everything's in Swift. Everything's perfect on my computer. Everything's there. And then like all of a sudden my Garmin shuts down. And you're like, oh my God, I don't even know how to get back home from this run. And not only do I not know how to get home, I don't even know what pace to run on my way back home. It's just like we forget all these things, and as the sport grows, I think one of the biggest obstacles too, and I think one of the barriers that we continue to face is the overcomplication of training and racing. To me, it's no different than the technology and the price of bikes. It's the whether it's AI, whether it's, lactate, whether it's polarized training, regardless of what it is. The overcomplication of training, I think, is a huge obstacle because, you could probably hop on Google and then Chat GPT and search two different things and get 18 different answers. And you're like, wait a minute, what? I don't even know what to do right now. And I think, again, like I know I've been rambling most of the day, but I think that these are all things that come to mind when I think of athletes racing. Is it's more about their mental and emotional preparation leading up to the race, and are they ready to do their best? Maybe not have their best day. Yes, you want them to have their best day. Yes, you want them to get the most out of it. Yes, you have to pay attention to to how they taper, and you got to take chances. But also, like that's a big thing. Is like take some chances, take a flyer. Don't be so cautionary because you're so paralyzed and it might be a bad result. I mean, that's one of the things. I'll just be totally transparent. Like one of the things I'm going to experiment more and more this year is shorter tapers. I mean, even shorter than normal, and just see what happens. Like that's how we grow. That's how we figure things out. But the cool thing is, like even if it really works, it doesn't mean it'll work every time. And if it's a disaster, then you own up to it, and then you say, you know what? But also doesn't mean it won't work the next time. And that's just part of it. Like it's, again, I think we just overcomplicate and try to be overly specific in most things, and it just leads to less freehanding.
Yeah, for sure. We can wrap this up. I just want to quickly touch on the concept of excitement based, kind of on the that New Mexico race, what you're talking about. And how I'm vulnerable to that. I know this, and I've been through it, and you sort of put things on your calendar because it's sort of like, all right, I'm going to go show the world, and I'm going to be an Ironman or whatever. And the reality is like, I've just always worked on figuring out how to shift that as in, okay, that's going to be a great challenge for me. How do I get there? It's not like it is the be all end all. It's not the medal. It's the process. And I'm like I said, I'm vulnerable to that, putting outside targets out there because it gets me excited or whatever. But it's really it's always been a work in progress for me. It's sort of like you're talking about Ironman and how literally I always put myself in the garage, back in I don't always do it, but I try to do that. If I wear the wrong shit, I just kind of roll through it and try to figure it out, because it's always something like a challenge or whatever. And I've always sort of kind of tried to numb myself out a little bit, not numb myself out, but simplify my brain on that stuff, because like you said, when you get to race day, if you're overstimulated by the time you get there, then it doesn't help. But I've always kind of depended on race day and the race atmosphere and race energy for like 20-25% of my training, capacity. And it's just like, I don't know, a lot of people will like put a vacation on, we're going to Greece next year or whatever, and then that becomes, well, I'm going to Greece in 3 months or whatever, and then you go to Greece and like 6 days into it, you're going, man, I can't wait to get back home. It's just a weird thing that I think people do, and that's true. It's like I just
true.
That's all, my quest, I guess, to live in the moment and just be at peace with what is, because if you're always hyped, then you're going to come down. It's almost like I force myself every once in a while. You mentioned coffee, but I'll force myself once in a while to take a day off, just so I recognize the benefit.
Yeah, remove that. Edit that out of the podcast.
Some days I just feel like, it's like, this is just like a drug.
You're right. I just don't want you to say it out loud.
Well, that's just how it goes. I'll do that with a lot of shit, actually. But not like, I think that's it too, is like, I also will say, coffee ain't doing it for me. I'm just done with it. But that doesn't work. But I'll be like, just take it out for a day or something, or sugar or whatever, or, eliminate pizza for a week. I don't know. Just because you lose, you get kind of immune to it or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. We can wrap it right there.
No, that was a good one. I like that one. I could go longer, but yeah, we've rambled enough. Well, we hope we got something out of it. We know we're not the most outlined, specific, but again, like, we've both been doing this for, what feels like, and is decades, and worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of athletes on every level of the sport, and both ends of the spectrum, and it's, we get these conversations and topics, either one, because we're either currently having them as individuals or collectively, or we've had them in the past, or it's top of mind because the athletes that we work with, who we're in the weeds with every day, it's on their top of mind. It just doesn't come out in social media. It doesn't just come out in marketing. It doesn't come up on most podcasts. It's more science, and interviews and this, because that, that sells, for a lot of people. But I think it's important. And, again, like I know you and I both, like, we really appreciate getting the emails that we get of, how our podcast has helped you in a lot of different ways. And, a lot of times it's up top, right? In chin, or from the chin up. And so that, again, like, that's the stuff that I think transcends not just sport, but also, how you live and manage your life. As always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com, and it's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. Anything from Mike, he's available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. Anything from me specifically, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man. Well, I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I'm out next week. I'll be down in Ironman, Texas. So if you're down there, come say hi and come ask me where Mike is. That's my usual. Hey man, where's Mike? You don't even say hi to me. You don't even shake a hand. Like, we're in C26 gear. It's like, hey, is Mike here? No, he's not. Oh, well, guess I'll wait till Wisconsin, get a selfie. So
hilarious. Well, yeah, I can't do that.
Nah, man, it's a big ask.
All right, dude. I will catch you later, man.
Take you later, dude.
All right, see ya.